Hello, everyone. It's Week 15, NFL playoffs, the first round anyway is almost done. A couple of games tonight, and for this doubleheader, we have a special guest on this special night, our season finale on the two-point conversion. Be sure to stay with us through the whole episode, including this intro.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So here we are, Week 15, Monday Night Football doubleheader. Gladys, you and I have grinded through a whole season here.
Yeah,
Especially hanging out with me must be a grind every week. So I appreciate you.
It's not a grind at all. You know that.
I just defaulted self-deprecating humor right off the bat, and here we are. Yes, but it's not about Gladys and I today. It's all about former co-host, yes, and our current special guest, Dr. James Ferretti. How you doing, Doc?
Hey guys, good to be back. I made it. We weren't sure if we were gonna get an episode in, but I made it back for the season finale, so it's good to be back.
And the Raiders play tonight, so everything just kind of lined up. Perfect.
Fantastic. I'm just hoping that Antonio Pierce doesn't get fired this offseason. I feel like he's maybe we can get into it when we talk about the game, but it's not his fault, man. Come on.
He deserves a quarter. Like give him a better quarterback than Gardner Minshew.
Give the guy a chance, man. But we'll talk about it later, I'm sure.
Yeah. So two games tonight. We've got the Chicago Bears at the Minnesota Vikings, and then the Atlanta Falcons at the Las Vegas Raiders. I believe the start time for the Bears-Vikings game is 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain. So I think the order of operations will be we'll go with that game first, just so we can get out of the way, because I know that the Doc's famous injury section returns for a special episode here, as there are a lot of injuries that deal directly with the fantasy football playoffs, and if we have time, look at some long-term injuries and how they'll affect players next year. So definitely going to touch on that, and then gives us the end of the episode to still be able to talk about Falcons Raiders before that kickoff. So does that sound good to everyone? I just made that plan out without consulting everyone beforehand, but how does that feel now live?
Yeah. Sounds good to me. What do you say, Gladys?
Sounds perfect, Doc.
All right, so I guess we might as well kick it off right off the bat with Vikings Bears, unless someone has something they want to talk about before we get to that game.
Vikings Bears.
Gladys speaks her mind. Yeah, so Chicago Bears at the Minnesota Vikings. Vikings favored by 7 points at home. And the higher lower is 43.5. And so Dan, Gladys, and I guess we'll not bury the lead and say the coronation today, because I officially have won the contest for this year.
All right, congratulations.
7 points up, 29 and 22, while Dan and Gladys are both tied at 22 and 29. So with 6 picks tonight, you can't possibly catch me. But Gladys, you're still trying to beat Dan, so good luck to you there, and thank you. So I guess I gotta say my Canadian players kept coming through for me. 3 of the last 4 props I've hit on have been all Canadian players. Don't have that tonight, unless you count offensive lineman Matthew Bergeron, the starting left guard for the Falcons. I didn't see any props for him for some reason. It's weird, but yeah, that's not even this game. Yeah, Vikings, Bears. So I guess, Doc, what do you want to say about this matchup before Gladys and I declare our picks and we share Dan's picks as well?
Yeah, well, I guess the first thing that we can talk about is DeAndre Swift is active for this game. It wasn't clear if he was going to be available. They've already ruled out Roschon Johnson. He's been out for a couple of days already. So it was a question of, was it going to be DeAndre Swift or was it going to be Travis Homer and running back du jour for Chicago? So it looks like Swift is going to be active. So if he's the guy that you're relying on for a Monday Night Miracle to get you into the next round of the playoffs, then go ahead and get him in there. And then as far as the points, I'm not gonna belabor it. I'm gonna take the lower. As you guys remember when I was the champ, when we did the picks for my last year, I think I picked lower 15 out of 17 weeks, and then one of the only times I went over was Kansas City Raiders, and that went like way over. It was like total points of like 80 or something like that. So I'm taking the lower. And then I'm going to think about what I want to do with these points here while you guys hash out the rest of it.
Well, yeah, I'm looking back to that 2022. You are correct. You had 2 hires all year, and one of those was that Chiefs Raiders game. You also took higher in Chargers Colts, the season finale,
Yeah,
which you didn't
I think I
get,
missed that one. Yeah.
but you also won by 5 over. I guess Dan was second place, so you comfortably had that. I think all that was also one where it was you'd already won it before the final week. So
Yeah, thank God, because that was the DeMar Hamlin Monday night game where the game never happened. Basically, fortunately,
oh right,
for
yeah,
everybody.
2017. Yeah, I I didn't even have it in here. That's true.
Not that that was the most important thing that came out of that game, but fortunately, there was no other tragedies, that came from that.
After week 16, you had a clear lead, so it was,
Yeah, we were good. Didn't matter, and
yeah, for sure. Way to go. Way to win that, Doc.
thank you.
Gladys
Sir.
won last year, and I won this year. I guess that's why Dan's not on the show.
The irony of the guy who has his own pick'em show not winning the pick'ems in 3 years is not lost on me. Hopefully, it's not lost on the audience either. But
Well, I will
think
give
that's-
Dan
I'm
credit.
just pointing things out.
The player props tends to be the thing he does the best with. I mean, last year, even though he didn't win the overall contest, even the year, yeah, because I'm looking at the year you won, Doc. Dan still had the best player props that year. He beat you. You both did pretty well, but he was slightly better by 1. So even that year where you won it all, Dan still showed player props is kind of his strong suit, and that is kind of what his show is based on. Less about the spread and the over-unders. So that much makes sense. Like Dan does tend to do better with props. I committed to picking Canadians this year, and that's worked.
And that works.
So well.
You got to go with what works.
Michael Hocht, a lineman for the Rams, the only Canadian I picked that didn't hit his prop, and that was a pretty long shot one, taking him higher on sacks. I should have taken Javon Holland that week, and I didn't, and I didn't hit on the A-Chan prop I got, so I learned my lesson today for that. But yeah, Doc's philosophy of just go for the lower every time. Not gonna lie, I guess I'm already gonna call it. I'm going double lower. I'm going lower in this game and lower on the next game.
Okay.
43.5. I have so little faith in the Bears offense, but that's funny what my pick's going to be. But I just, I have little faith that Vikings really can blow out a team either. So I don't think that the points get out of control. I think the defenses hold up enough, and yeah, the lower hits here.
Did we wake the baby?
I just hit mute, so you guys didn't hear that. I don't think it was you guys. I think the baby just decided to get up, so she's making her presence known.
Yay!
So I guess we started with the higher lowers there. Gladys, what do you have for the higher lower in this game?
I'm going higher in this game.
Okay. Dan is as well. Also taking the higher than 43.5. Is there any particular reason?
Nope. None at all. I just
She's like, I'm out of it. I can't win. I don't care anymore.
All right. So pick the spread. Who do you want to go first, Gladys? Or?
Yeah, Gladys, you go first.
What am I doing?
So the Vikings or Bears?
I'm gonna give Bears +7.
All right. Well, that sets up we're gonna end with a unanimous pick. I've also taken the Bears +7, and so has Dan.
Yeah, we're gonna make it all 4 of us. I think I'm going Bears +7 as well.
Nice.
So this is something we're gonna try and get better at, Doc. You'd think that when we're all in agreement on either a pick against the spread or a higher lower,
yeah,
you do well because if we all agree, we are 4-7 this year in those instances. So we got to get right eventually. We're gonna do it here with the Bears, I suppose. But yeah, if you want to share why you're picking Bears +7.
I mean, it's a lot of points. Go ahead, Gladys. You go.
No, go ahead.
All right, mine's going to be brief. I think that the Vikings win the game, but I could see them. It's an interdivision game. Those games always can get squirrely. I could see the Vikings winning by 3 or 4, and it could even be like a garbage time touchdown by Chicago. With the Vikings being up 10 and they make it close, and it's just not good enough. So I mean, I could see that happening pretty easily. So that's where I'm at.
Indoors.
Yeah.
I mean, the Bears got embarrassed last week. I can see them almost winning this game outright. I don't like divisional games, specifically AFC North divisional games, but I don't like any divisional games, and crazy things happen in divisional games. And Sam Darnold has been on an upward trajectory. I don't know if that's going to last forever. And before last week, Thomas Brown had the Bears playing well. Hopefully, he learned his lesson and scaled back a little bit, and it's back just helping the offense. So I can see the Bears actually winning the game outright. Not by a lot, but I can see them winning.
Yeah, I was just looking through even the games. A lot of times the Bears have lost this year. They've kept it close. So that includes losing to the Vikings by only 3 earlier this year. The Bears, in terms of as +7 underdogs, would have been the correct pick 10 out of 13 times this year. So there's only 3 games where they've lost by more than 7 points. So they've just, even when Eberflus was there, they were keeping games close. You know, the recent beating or bludgeoning by the 49ers notwithstanding, they've tended to keep games close. But I also looked, the Vikings have only covered a 7-point spread 5 times this year. They have a hard time really blowing teams out and pulling away, which is why I also went with the lower. Just thinking that neither team scores enough points. The Bears will do enough on defense to keep it close and prevent the Vikings from totally running away with it. So yeah, that's why I went Bears and the lower on the point total. And yeah, so we all go Bears +7. I think just too high. It's right. 7 is just too much to take on the Vikings, and we don't want to put betting 7 points on Sam Darnold just feels weird, right? No matter who he's playing against.
Well, I mean, you know, I'm a Sam Darnold apologist, but I can't really take any credit for that. I mean, he finally kind of proved me right 3 years later after some really bad production up until now. But the thing with the Vikings is the Vikings need this game if they want to kind of. They already clinched a playoff spot, but they're right there now with the Lions after they lost. So, they win and then they're tied. They're all tied at 12-2. So, things for that division get very interesting.
Especially with a head-to-head game between the Lions and Vikings.
With a head-to-head game yet to play, that gets very, very interesting. But, I think the Bears going into, finishing out Caleb Williams' first year, with the coaching changes and things like that, I think this is something they could really build on. And I think nothing would make them happier than to kind of play spoiler for an interdivision rival with them, fighting for the division. So I think they're going to play really tough. And I don't think they're laying down in this one, despite their record or anything else.
Yeah, no, for sure. I totally agree there. I guess quick question about the Vikings and being a Sam Darnold apologist, Doc, and Gladys, you can chime in on this as well. What do you think the threshold is for how far the Vikings go for Darnold to be the quarterback next year? Where they say it doesn't matter what we think and what we invested in JJ McCarthy, you did so well, we have to go with you. Because I have something pretty clear in my mind, but I'm curious what you both think.
Gladys.
I think that Kevin O'Connell thinks or knows that he is such a good OC that it almost doesn't matter who's under center. So I don't think that they're going to give a Kirk Cousins contract to Sam Darnold. I don't think Sam Darnold will be in. If McCarthy's legs, if he gets better, if it's he's young, what was it, Doc? An ACL tear, MCL tear?
For McCarthy?
Yeah.
But he tore his meniscus.
Oh.
So I guess he tore it bad enough that it was there's grades of meniscal tear. So I guess he tore it bad enough that he needed to get it operated on, and they just didn't want to take a chance of bringing it back. And,
right. So, yeah.
So we're not hearing the sirens of Sam Darnold robbing the Vikings of millions of dollars.
So I think that I don't think he'll be in. I think another team will offer him more money, and he will go with the money.
Okay. So you're almost saying like Sam Darnold wins the Super Bowl with Minnesota. That makes him such a hot commodity. Someone will pay him so much to knock him.
No, I don't think Sam Darnold's going to win the Super Bowl with Minnesota. So
yeah, I tend to not think so either. But
Well,
What do you
I
think,
don't.
Doc? Do you think there's a certain level if he gets to a certain
Yeah, I think if they make this, I think if they make the Super Bowl, provided he makes a Super Bowl and doesn't completely crap the bed, because that would undo everything. But I think
Yeah.
that's the level that he needs to get to. Otherwise, I think what Gladys said is exactly right. There's going to be another team that's going to be, extremely thirsty for decent quarterback play. They're going to see what he did this year. It's going to be relatively cost effective, given the way the quarterback contracts are, to offer him a contract, and they're going to do it. And the Vikings are going to say, hey, you know what? We have other needs. We have other people that we want to pay. We have another option in-house. Coach O'Connell's a quarterback whisperer. Let's just make it happen. And if that doesn't work out, then we'll find somebody else. We'll pick somebody else off the scrap heap, and we'll make them, the head
Quarterback
of the
relevant. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think they I heard a saying a couple of weeks ago I thought was really good. Was talking about like a guy getting his ideas stolen and things like that. And he said, I don't worry about producing golden eggs. I want to be the goose that makes the golden eggs. So I think that's kind of the way that, the NFL and the Vikings and O'Connell sees himself, is like, while Sam Darnold now may be a golden egg, like he can produce another golden egg if he needs to. So he'll just keep doing that.
Plus, he has the track record. I mean, look how well he did last year with like what 5 different quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, he made Joshua Dobbs into a QB1,
Exactly.
3 or 4 weeks out of the year. That if that doesn't say it right there, then I don't know what does.
Yeah, zooming through the atmosphere, that the heights that Josh Dobbs reached last year was pretty incredible. I would think it'd have to be an incredible run, like Doc said, going to the Super Bowl. And I think back to probably the best Viking seasons we've seen since that Randy Moss rookie season, where they almost went to the Super Bowl that year. They went to the NFC Championship game in 2017 against the Eagles, the Nick Foles year. That was Case Keenum. That was quarterback. And what did they do that very next offseason? It doesn't matter you went to the NFC Championship game. We are giving Kirk Cousins a massive contract, because if we think there's a better quarterback, we'll do that. So we know, I think at the very least, they set that threshold that, let's say Sam Darnold takes them to the NFC Championship game this year and loses, and they absolutely think McCarthy's ready and they want him to be the guy next year. There's no question he is the guy next year. It's at that point, like, Darnold didn't do good enough that it's not in his control anymore. Go to a Super Bowl, something the Vikings haven't done since the Steel Curtain days in the 70s. That might be different, because, okay, that's something we haven't seen yet. But they could still decide to go with McCarthy anyway. But I think that's the minimum level that Darnold has to get to if he wants to be the quarterback of the Vikings next year. But speaking of Darnold, did anyone go with a Sam Darnold prop? I thought about it. There was an enticing one, but ultimately found something a little lower that I was a little more comfortable with.
I did not. Did Dan go Sam Darnold prop?
No, Dan chose TJ Hawkinson higher than 4 catches.
Oh, interesting.
In a certain way, I hope he's wrong, but yeah.
I have TJ Hawkinson higher than 44.5 yards.
Oh, okay. I guess I hope you're wrong too. So that's interesting. I guess you and Dan connected with your picks. I'm glad we went with you two first, because that makes a lot of sense. Thinking that if one of you hits, the other probably will hit too.
Yes.
Hawk can catch 4 passes. He's probably getting 45 yards. I think he can handle 10 yards per catch. So mine ended up being, I was trying to just have fun and either pick higher on players I have on my fantasy teams wanting to win these playoff games this week, or lower on the players I'm playing against. Nothing. It was easier to do for the other game. For this game, it was pretty tough to find something that fit, so I almost went opposite. I also went with a Vikings tight end prop. So that's hilarious that all 3 of us chose a Vikings tight end. Maybe because the Bears are really bad at defending the tight end. Yeah, so I think
that's probably why.
And I didn't love going lower on any Hawkinson's lines. Just didn't have enough faith there that he would hit them, because the Bears are so bad at defending the tight end. So I went opposite. I went against that. Okay, what if Hawkinson doesn't get all that production? What if Josh Oliver comes on the field and steals snaps away from Hawkinson? That'll help me in fantasy as well. But 11.5 receiving yards for Oliver seems really low. On the season, the 10 games he's played, and I think I'm not counting the 1 game he left with an injury, 0 targets. So I kind of took that game out. It would have been 11, but from the 10 games he played and essentially finished, 6 times he's gone over that, 4 times he hasn't. His last 5 games in a row, he's gone over 11.5 11.5 receiving yards, and some of them he's in the 40s and like smashing by it. So that trend of 5 games in a row over, that makes that Josh Oliver line seem really low at 11.5 receiving yards again against the Bears defense that is notoriously bad at defending the tight end. So all three of us going with the Vikings tight end. We all pick the Bears, but we still have, even if we think the Bears could keep this close, we have little faith that they'll actually stop a tight end.
I think that's why I went higher.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think all of us went higher on a tight end prop.
Yeah. I mean, on the score.
On the score, right? Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, true. Doc, did you look up any props? Did you see?
I didn't. No, so
Okay.
I'm gonna keep it. I'm gonna keep it regular. Although I do like the T.J. Hawkinson over props. If I was if I was gonna pick one, or either one, I think they're both good because we know he's super talented. I think the market and his numbers are kind of depressed because he's been injured and he hasn't really been in there. But we know what he can do when he's out there and he's feeling good. So if tonight he's feeling good, he could double those numbers, and that wouldn't surprise me one bit.
And I mean, someone who dealt with an injury late last year, so we knew that maybe the slow production as the season went on, he'd get stronger, right, Doc? Is that?
Yeah, we talked about this. I don't know if it was last year or during the off season, but this was the time where I know I mentioned it. I was like, you don't get T.J. Hawkinson for weeks 1 through 10. You get him for coming down the stretch and into the playoffs, where you basically give yourself the option of plugging in a top 5 tight end into your fantasy playoff lineups. So this is, if you have him, this is what you had him for. And now he gets a chance to shine. And when you're in the playoffs, that's really all you can ask for. That your guys that you put out there, they go more, more upside and less Cooper Kupp, but we're not going to talk about that.
Oh man, 0. Yeah. And I mean, it's funny. You could have gone the lowest possible line on Kupp and he still wouldn't have hit. But, got to say, I like Josh Oliver, backup tight end receiving yards. I definitely used to do that a couple years ago, Doc, right? Like, just take a stupid low line, one play.
Yeah.
I was thinking Sam Darnold. I think I saw it at 13.5 rushing yards.
Yeah, those are the tough ones, man. Because then you're just sitting there in the fourth quarter. He's got 9 rushing yards, and you're like, oh, come on. And then,
come on, Sam. One more scramble.
And then sometimes we get it, and then they do the kneel down, and you lose 2 yards, and that's how he's got 15 yards. He does 3 kneel downs, and then you lose a gut punch.
Yeah, especially I think rushing yards for a quarterback that's favored probably isn't a great call for that reason. You go for the quarterbacks that are underdogs because they're less likely to kneel down at the end. So I thought the Oliver line was better. Jamie saying hi, Doc, and then correcting it with "What's up, Doc?" We'll hop around that joke a little bit, but one line that I almost decided to take: Cam Akers higher than half a receiving yard.
Oh wow!
Essentially betting you, is he going to catch a pass? Right?
Cam Akers of his 14 career receptions or something.
Well, exactly.
Like that.
He has 0 catches the last 2 games, so they're giving you that line. It's like, the other line I wanted to kind of pick under on was Aaron Jones under on receiving yards. So that was the one thing is I've noticed the Vikings are throwing less to their running backs the last few weeks. So that made that tempting as maybe a potential lower, but again, I'm sticking with Josh Oliver. I have good confidence in that line. But talk about Hawkinson, talk about injuries. It's time for the Doctor Injury segment. I don't know why I'm doing this with my voice. Anyway, Doc, we've got some injured players that happened just this past weekend. So there's going to be potential consequences for players in the fantasy football playoffs themselves. I guess David Montgomery might be of the most significance. Maybe also the simplest to talk about. So let's take it there.
Who declared him out already?
Yeah, it's simple. It's a lot simpler now. It was looking like he was going to miss the majority of the rest of the fantasy playoffs, if not all the fantasy playoffs anyway. But then they kind of took the mystery out of it and just went ahead and said he's going to get season-ending surgery, so he's going to be out for the rest of the year, which sucks for Detroit. Like real life football wise, he's probably going to be out for the majority of the fantasy playoffs, but you would at least think he would be there for the playoffs. Like Detroit has got Super Bowl aspirations for the first time since the 1960s. So this is a big blow to their team. But
Technically, I don't think they've ever had Super Bowl aspirations because by the time the Super Bowl came in the late 60s, I don't think they were good anymore.
they weren't good
Early
anymore.
60s, I think they were still the remnants of that championship.
Yeah.
By the time the first Super Bowl hit, I think that was long gone. So
they haven't had Super Bowl aspirations
last year. They had Super Bowl aspirations.
Yeah, these are the 2 years. It's these 2 years. That's the only thing fans have ever known is like legit hope for it.
I mean, Detroit's been decimated by injuries, like mostly on the defensive side. But I don't know that Montgomery is going to hurt them because of Gibbs as much as it hurts the fantasy community.
Yeah. Well, he certainly gets his chance to shine now, and we've actually seen this before. There was, it was the we'll call it the schizophrenic behavior of the fantasy community as a whole, where Jahmyr Gibbs gets taken last year with a first-round pick, and everybody says wheels up for Jahmyr Gibbs. 3 games in, he's not really getting the carries, and Montgomery's getting all the carries, and everybody says Jahmyr Gibbs is a bust, and then Montgomery gets hurt. Jahmyr Gibbs does Jahmyr Gibbs things, and look at that. He turns out he's good again. So he'll get that chance again, and we've already seen what he can do when he's got the backfield essentially all to himself. So I would expect more of that.
I had Jahmyr Gibbs on my Scott Fishbowl team. Doesn't help now that I've been eliminated, but he's there. He's there.
Right? Hey, Doc, the foot that Nick Chubb broke, is that on the same leg that he had the knee injury?
That is an excellent question. I'm going to have to look that up. However, I'm not sure.
I guess one other question, if you're looking things up, Doc, what is the exact nature of David Montgomery's injury? Did they reveal that, or just say he had surgery?
He injured his MCL, so the ligament on the inside of the knee. So maybe they thought it wasn't torn bad enough initially that he was going to be able to recover in about 4 or 5 weeks, something like that. The interesting thing about the MCL is that it's also attached to the medial meniscus, which the LCL, the lateral collateral ligament, is not attached to the lateral meniscus. And sometimes you can miss those little ligaments that attach the MCL to the meniscus. And if they're actually torn, that's something that can cause instability and is, could be something that requires surgery. So it might have been something that they kind of passed over the first time, said, all right, the ligament's partially torn, but doesn't look like it's going to be surgical. Then went back and looked at it again when they had a little more time, and then saw maybe there was an injury, associated injury to the meniscus, or some other injuries associated with that, and that is what required them eventually to say that he needs surgery. That's just an educated guess, but I think that might have been what happened.
Based on education I've received from listening to Doc all these years of reading his book, Injuries Suck, but Your Fantasy Team Doesn't Have to. I would guess that this is going to be a fairly long recovery, which is why they wanted to get the surgery now, as opposed to wait and see. Oh, could you make it to the Super Bowl and then get surgery afterwards? This feels like he's not necessarily guaranteed to start week 1 next year.
I don't know if I go that far. I think maybe the bigger issue is just for the rest of this year, because those ligaments are stabilizers of the knee. When you have an injury to one of them, there is a chance that you can get hurt worse, and in some cases a lot worse. Things that kind of run together are MCL, medial meniscus, and ACL. So if your MCL and your medial meniscus are compromised, that increases the risk that you could potentially injure your ACL, and as we know, that would knock you out for the rest of the year. And then require 9-10 month recovery. So it may have been something where they said, hey, you know what? He's going to be compromised as a runner as it is, and there's a chance he actually makes it worse. And in some cases, it could be a lot worse. So it's just not worth the risk, even though we are trying to get to the Super Bowl. We feel like Jahmyr Gibbs and whoever else they have back there is going to be able to get them there. So that's probably was the thinking. Craig Reynolds.
Salone Vaki, I think, too.
Hey, Craig Reynolds has had a couple of fantasy relevant weeks, so he wouldn't be the worst stash in the world.
I think there was a game last year where both Gibbs and Montgomery were out, and Reynolds actually got
God
decent,
forbid,
not to their level.
Your Gibbs, you could be rolling out Craig Reynolds as an RB1 in your fantasy championship. Oh boy.
So Gladys, at least to say, like, this makes Montgomery still a draftable option next year in fantasy football. We might get a little bit of an injury discount. He might even be cheaper next year than expected. But I guess the way Doc's talking, we're not too worried about next year, it seems.
Yeah, Monty's under contract next year already, so that may have played into it too. If he was a free agent, you know how the NFL is. They might have just said, "I rub some dirt on it, get out there. We actually don't care what happens to you after the season is over." But since they have him under contract, and it's a decent contract, it's 2 years, 18 million change. So for running back as good as David Montgomery, who's only going to be, I think, 28 next year, that's still pretty good. So I think they actually do care about his maybe not long-term health, because this is the NFL, but at least his moderate-term health.
I mean, that's fair for a running back too. Like that might put him in, I think, certainly in the top 10 in terms of running back salary.
Yeah.
So they have something fairly significant, at least for that position, invested. So I guess Nick Chubb would be the next guy to address this.
Yeah. So Nick Chubb, the saga continues. He broke his foot, so he's out for the year. Did not find out if it's on the same side. Gladys, I promise I will get that to you by the end of the show. But the good news is they don't think it's going to be surgical. So that most likely means we're not dealing with things like a Liz Frank injury or anything like that. It's just, you have a broken bone in your foot. That makes it hard to run, to put it mildly. You don't need to be an injury analyst to know that. Basically Cleveland, apologies to Jamie. I know you're watching. Hi again, by the way. They just continue to be a dumpster fire. So, what are we doing with this poor guy? He's suffered enough, right? So it's like we gotta run him out there with a broken foot after all they've been through this year. Put him on the shelf and let him heal up. And
he could be potentially a free agent next year too. I think they can easily get out of the contract if he is a free agent already. I think he might actually just be a free agent.
Yeah, I think he is. He is a free agent. He signed a 1 year, $2 million contract.
I think he restructured this year, so they were going to cut him, and then he took a bit of a pay cut. They justified keeping him that way.
Yeah,
so he was already on his last leg in theory with the team.
For you guys, though, you guys are much more ageist than I am, which is saying not much. But he's going to be, I think, 29 next year. He has demonstrated that he can still play after his leg came apart last year when he injured all the ligaments in his knee. They fixed that. He went out there and he's able to perform. Would you take a late round dart on Nick Chubb now that people are going to forget about this guy because of his broken foot? He's not even going to be in the consciousness next year. People remember he got hurt 1 year, came back, got hurt again. You know how fantasy football players are. You're basically dead to them at that point. So
Jerome Ford's ADP
am I going to be the only one who's still interested?
Jerome Ford's ADP is going to be 8 rounds higher than Chubb.
Exactly.
I like Jerome Ford.
Wasn't that the same injury he had in college, though? The ACL, MCL tear? Didn't he have that?
It was pretty bad. It was obviously it was a complex tear. His
but didn't he hurt it? Didn't he hurt the same? Didn't he have that same injury earlier in college?
I believe so. I think he did.
That's the second injury on that same leg, that kind of injury. That's why I was wondering if the broken foot was on the other one because he was favoring that leg. You know what I mean? So
I guess my speculation is that if it was going to be an injury like that, Gladys, we'd see it more like his hamstring injury. Whereas I think the broken foot happened because of the play, right? Whatever play happened, whether his knee was fine or not, if his foot hit a certain way, it was always going to break no matter what.
Okay, I got it, Gladys.
Okay.
So the knee injury, he tore the ligaments in the same knee. It was his left knee.
Okay.
So he tore it in 2015 and he tore it last year, or he tore all the ligaments last year. And the foot fracture is on his left foot. So basically his left side is
destiny. Shit. Yeah, it's just shit.
And I wonder. Sorry,
I think it would depend on where he goes. If I would draft him, I'm not gonna not draft him if he comes out okay because he's a hard runner.
What if he stays on the Browns? Is that a bad spot because we think the offense is so bad? You'd want him on a good offense good offensive line where it's not all on him. Got a good quarterback to set him up in goal line situations,
and preferably indoors, preferably in an indoor arena, not outside.
Although his best game this year came in the snow, so.
Oh yeah, he had that monster game.
I guess
it's a 2-touchdown game.
I monster for him this season.
Yeah,
right.
Monster score.
And I guess I'm gonna guess that Doc, like this foot injury, assuming it heals properly, shouldn't have any effects on next season. Right? Like this is even less likely to affect him next year than say David Montgomery's injury, right?
I don't think it's going to affect him really. I think it's more of a conglomeration of all of his injuries, but I think that the market is going to be, if not, like I think you're going to be hard pressed to find anybody other than yours truly who's even going to give him the time of day. I mean, he's going to be 29, which, basically half the fantasy community wants to take you out back and shoot you in the head when you're 27. So he's already 2 years past that. He's torn he's had complex tears of his ACL in the same knee twice, and now he breaks his foot on the same leg. I mean, they're going to be lining up to take him to the glue factory. So
I mean, Jamie said buy him for late thirds, and honestly, like someone who's frustrated, that might actually get it done. Like you take that price,
definitely going to get it done. They're just going to be like, I'll sell him for a Snickers bar and a large Diet Pepsi. Like they're not going to be interested in Chubb at all. But so I would still, because the market is going to be so depressed, like why not? I'll take a shot. Like if
you're going to be so cheap even in redraft, let alone dynasty.
Yeah, if you get 8 games out of him next year due to injury, bye week replacement, or whatever, you more than made your money back. And God forbid he actually turns around and has a productive year.
That's what I'm wondering. The year removed from the ACL injury, is it possible he's actually more efficient next year than we saw this year? Like this is
very possible.
This isn't like the slope isn't okay. Now he's done, and this is a downward trajectory the rest of his career. Like next year might actually rebound to a better season, which makes next year maybe the year you really want to invest in Chubb. It's so cheap. And then, like, he'll have a good season. Then you definitely don't want to invest in the year after because he's going to be more expensive, probably, right? Like,
and he'll be pushing 30 at that point or whatever. But, like, basically, like, Nick Chubb for next year is basically like what recency bias would look like if he was a running back for the Browns. Like, this is it. I'm
going to say I probably don't want to have Chubb in Dynasty. I think we're past the stages where I think I really want him in Dynasty, but I think he'll be so cheap next year that he'll be really interesting in redraft. So I think that's where I especially want to target him. Kind of like J.K. Dobbins was this year. And that turned out to be a really good investment. He might even end up cheaper than that. And apparently, even with that broken foot, Jamie says he's still the best player on the field for the Browns, which isn't that hard.
I would disagree. Myles Garrett's the best player.
I think Cedric Tillman might have something to say about that.
Well, Tillman hasn't been on the field recently, but you're right, Gladys. It's going to be Myles Garrett. So, Bryce, thank you for joining. Welcome. And down by 28, have Bowers and Vikings defense need a flex option for PPR. So Aaron Jones, Jordan Addison, or DJ Moore. Their opponent has Darnold to play.
I would go Addison. Unless ask him, hey Bryce, are you getting minus points for like fumbles and interceptions and stuff? Does your league do that? Because if you do that, then Jones is automatically out. So it'd be Addison or Moore. And I would hate to say Addison because I'm playing against a guy that has both Addison and Hawkinson, and I need lots of points from Moore and Minnesota's defense, but I don't want to put it out there in the universe, but I would go Addison by far.
We talked about this on Sunday. Like Addison versus Moore was definitely a decision we discussed on Sunday. Do you have any thoughts on this one?
Let's see. He's down by 28. The way that I'm thinking about it now is you kind of have to try to like, what's the way that the game can go where I can win, right? So let's say Bowers does well.
Fumbles are -2.
What?
Fumbles are -2. It's like, good Lord.
I'm just kind of thinking if he's got Darnold and you could play Addison, like you just kind of say like, Vikings play good D. It's a low scoring game. But Darnold completely craps the bed. So that takes Addison out of the equation, and DJ Moore still finds a way to get it done, and he gets you some points. So that's kind of like the way that I'm leaning. It's like you want to play the option where it's like Darnold and the Vikings have a bad game offensively, and that's how you kind of get home. That's because Addison and Moore are close, I probably would lean DJ Moore. He's the wide receiver 1 on that team, and you just hope that he shows out on Monday night.
Because I have Addison ranked pretty high over Moore, and I think definitely this on Sunday I was telling people to play Addison. Really high goal line grade this week passing for the Vikings, so I could see it being another spike week. I believe the last time Addison played the Bears, he was the wide receiver 1 on the week. So he has that upside, but if he hits that, it's probably because Darnold's having a good week. I think to Doc's point, you play the narrative where Darnold doesn't have the great game, and that's what allows you to, between Bowers and the Vikings defense and whoever this player is, get to those points. Aaron Jones could, in theory, do that, getting rushing touchdowns. That's not as actually. Let me check the goal line grades. I don't know. Neither seem likely between him and the Bears scoring passing touchdowns. Because my first thought was upside. You want Addison because he feels like he
100%.
has that difference-making upside. But if it's Addison combined with Darnold, are you really getting that much upside?
Yeah.
Every time Addison
Unless
scores
Darnold
big,
throws a shit ton of interceptions too.
yeah, you'd have to have that one hope. If he's doing it that much, is Addison really going to spike? Like that's less possessions. He can kind of go up.
Mooney did with Kirk Cousins, so it's a possibility.
Yeah, that's fair.
So Addison's last 5 PPR games, 4.9, 15.1, 30.2, 9.4, 39.3. So that it's like he's going to hit or he's not. DJ Moore is definitely more consistent. He's pretty consistently in double digits, high teens, low 20s.
Actually, that was a prop. DJ Moore higher than 5.5 receptions. He's hit it like 4 weeks in a row. So like since Thomas Brown's taken over, we are making sure DJ Moore gets volume. He is going to catch passes every game, even if it's short depth of target. The yards might not be monster, but he's at least going to get that for sure volume.
I agree with Doc.
Down by 28, I don't know that your floor and safety really come into it. You're really just trying to find where do I have this upside.
Yeah, a way to kind of take his guy out, you still get points, and it's enough to get you there. Because I think if Darnold blows up and Addison blows up, if it was closer, maybe it's different. But if you're already down 30, basically, I don't think it's going to be enough to get you there.
Yeah, down by 5, this might make sense.
Yeah, that's a whole different.
You're capping their upside of unless Addison's the guy that gets ignored and Darnold throws 5 touchdowns to other guys, you're probably eating into that. Down by 28, you're probably. Yeah, I don't know. I'm torn because in one way, Aaron Jones scoring touchdowns would be that scenario where Darnold doesn't get them. So like DJ Moore could go off, but so could Sam Darnold, and you could still lose anyway. It's one of those things where if you get it with Aaron Jones, that might be the scenario where you get the 28 points. I know that's what Jamie's saying. Like, go with Aaron Jones. I know, Gladys, that makes you a little afraid because of the fumbles. I'm going to say I'm not as worried about the downside here. I think this is pure upside. I think I would go Aaron Jones. I think you go Aaron Jones in the narrative that he scores rushing touchdowns. That's what A gets you points and B prevents Darnold from scoring. Because I think Moore could go off, but so could Darnold, right? Like I think that's, I don't know. Not that should necessarily matter. I guess I just have a feeling with Aaron Jones that might be the play.
All right.
Definitely tricky. I mean, I tend to think like when you get volume guys like Aaron Jones and you're debating between them and a wide receiver, I just want to go with the running back every time. They know they're guaranteed to get touches. A little different when it's like this specific. Okay, who can get me help me overcome a 28-point deficit?
So there's actually a good medical analogy for this, Bryce. Like you're kind of in this situation. So they have a saying that when you're doing a code on somebody, when somebody's like basically they don't have a functional heart rate and you're giving the medication and you're doing CPR, you can't do anything wrong because they're already gone. Like I look at your situation like this, like whatever ends up happening, like you made the right decision because your back's up against the wall. So it's not like the patient's already going downhill here. So whatever you end up doing, you're in desperation mode. So
this won't be the thing that sinks him.
This isn't going to be
down.
This isn't going to be the decision where you say, "Oh, I should have done this." Like whatever you end up picking, just know you did it. You were desperate and your back was against the wall, and you had to try to find a way to win.
Mind messed, is what Bryce says. Yeah. So again, I know Jamie said Aaron Jones. I'm. Now that I've kind of thought through it and talked through it, I think I would also lead Aaron Jones. Gladys, you're still sticking with DJ Moore?
Yep.
And Doc, do you have a call you want to make? You don't have to, since you're not actually.
I thought I said DJ Moore.
You said DJ Moore. Okay, so.
All right, so we've said don't go Addison, so I think you're good either way.
Yeah, with the upside there. It just doesn't quite give the upside. But I guess huge upside with I guess there really is one more running back we didn't touch on, or two really, because I'd like to talk about a little bit. Alvin Kamara, Doc.
Yep.
So we can move on to that now.
Yeah, so Alvin Kamara ended up leaving the game with a groin injury. They're calling it an adductor injury, that's basically one of the groin muscles. So this is going to be something where, usually if these things aren't injured too badly, it could be anywhere from, 1 to 2 weeks to, in some cases, up to 3 or 4 weeks. Given the fact that New Orleans really isn't, competitive, and they just signed Kamara to that extension, I don't think they're going to rush him back. So we may not see him again this year, and that would not surprise me at all. So that's kind of the way I'm reading the tea leaves right now. I don't think the injury is that bad. I don't think it's going to be anything that's going to hamper him going forward. He's had an amazing year, but I think, between him getting injured, Carr getting injured, every wide receiver they have is basically gotten injured. I think they're just going to pack it in and just say, we'll see you in 2025.
I could see if Carr was still healthy and they were still trying out their starting quarterback, I could see Kamara going there because they have belief in, okay, he can make a difference for us and win us these games. But with Rattler, they probably don't. They just started Jake Haener over Rattler this past week, so that shows they don't really have that much confidence in Rattler. Because if they did, they wouldn't hesitate to start him over Jake Haener. I still didn't quite get that because I still feel like Rattler. I don't know. I guess we haven't seen much of either, but that struck me as they don't really have confidence in either of them. If they had how can you have confidence in Jake Haener? If you had confidence in Rattler, there's no way you'd start Haener over him.
Whatever confidence they might have had in Jake Haener, I think that has evaporated. So I think Spencer Rattler is clearly the number 2 quarterback for this team when Taysom Hill is injured and Derek Carr isn't around.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. Oh wait, Jamie. Oh, only if someone told people to pick up Kendra Miller a couple weeks ago in the RPO football show. Yeah, there you go. Kendra Miller time, baby. So yeah, like as Doc saying, Kendra Miller
there too. Jamal Williams could still make himself relevant for the last couple weeks of the season.
But it does feel like Miller's, since he's come back off injured reserve, he's been getting most of the touches. So he's definitely the priority.
He's definitely the guy. But
he could be the lead back for the Saints the rest of the season.
100%.
Someone to pick up in these waiver times this year for last 2 weeks of the season, championship run. Kendra Miller might see his way into championship lineups. Okay, another player. So I wanted to talk about Bucky Irving. He did return last week and he played, but what do we think about Bucky Irving right now, rest of the season?
Yeah. So what's the concern with this? Because I looked it up and he practiced, he played. He's gutting it out. So what's your level of what brings the concern up for you?
I guess knowing that it's back, hip, and I think of Michael Pittman this year, the weird saga that happened where, he's going on IR 1 week and no, he actually played that week. But then a couple weeks later, the back injury just swelled up and he couldn't play. So I guess I'm just wondering, is there a risk of that with Irving that, okay, he played now. If you get to the championship week in 17, could he potentially miss it like
Yeah, I think it's possible. But the fact that he left the game against Las Vegas, he was able to practice, and then, he went out there and, he played, he went down as far as his snap share and his carries and things like that from what he had been doing in weeks past. But he was still able to produce. And, at this time of the year, it kind of becomes a question of what options do you really have? Especially the last few weeks, injuries have been really bad. And, some teams or some rosters are limited as far as pickups they can do or trades that they may or may not be able to make. So, if he's somebody where you don't have a clearly better option, I think he's fine to run out there. And
as Gator's saying, excited to see you, Doc, that Bucky Irving's a must start.
Yeah.
If he's healthy and he's active, he's active.
You're playing him, and he's got some really nice. He's got at Dallas and playing Carolina in championship week. So as far as matchups go, it doesn't get much better than that.
I think the one thing I heard him this week, 112 yards, but he didn't get a touchdown. I think he had negative receiving yards. So his fantasy game wasn't that great. He scores a touchdown though, which he's definitely done this year. I do wonder though if this also makes Rachaad White pretty close to a must start still, that they'll split both of them so much and they'll have White on for so many receiving downs that Rachaad White is still startable in fantasy even if Irving's active.
I think if I had either one of them, I would start them. That's kind of where I'm at. Gladys, are you leaving any of these guys out if you had the option? As a matter of fact, do you have any of these guys? I don't want to be too premature, but it looks like you're going to get your first win in the FPC Dynasty League here heading into the semifinals. So that's pretty exciting.
It is pretty exciting, especially since I suck at Dynasty. It is very exciting.
Hey, you're the 3 seed and you're about to win in the semifinals and go up against Brad, I think.
And who's Gladys playing this week?
She's playing Achille this week.
Former champ.
Yeah.
Achille.
Taking down a former
I don't
champ.
want to hear any more of this I suck at Dynasty talk. We'll have no more of that. We'll have no more of that self-slander.
Self-slander. No, I don't have. I don't think I have any. I have Mike Evans in the league, but I don't have any of the running backs for Tampa. But they have a really sweet schedule for fantasy playoffs. Like any Tampa player you're going to play.
Yeah, they both are doing both running backs are doing really well. Mike Evans, we know he's a beast. Especially
even McMillan's doing well.
Yeah.
Like catching a couple touchdowns. Doc, I have a question about TJ Watt's injury.
Okay.
What is it and why did he go out? Although,
let's see. I read a little something about that. Let's see. Sprained his ankle.
Oh. Okay.
Doesn't look like it's a high. Sustains low ankle sprain. I wouldn't worry about this too much. I'd say he's probably has a decent chance that he's going to play next week. They'll tape it up, numb it up, get him out.
It is a Saturday game, so shorter week. Do you think that hurts? I mean, I suppose in theory it does hurt, but do you think it hurts it significantly where there's more of a danger that he misses than knowing that it's Saturday as opposed to Sunday?
Not really. I mean, an extra day would help, but I think it's going to be the difference between a low ankle sprain and a high ankle sprain is the low ankle sprain is kind of contained in an area where you really can immobilize it, and that significantly decreases the effect on the player. So it's going to be something they're going to be able to numb it up, tape it up, most likely, and at least get him out there for some of the plays. So it might be a reduced snap share, but I think he's still going to be able to play through it. If not, then, certainly the week after, I think he would be available. Conversely, when you have a high ankle sprain, it's a large area. Yeah, Patrick, we can transition right into that. It's a large area that's affected. It's really hard to immobilize that significantly. So anytime you run, you cut, you do anything other than go in a straight line, it really hurts. And you do more damage and you increase the time it takes to heal. We've already seen Patrick Mahomes, who is now dealing with what they called, and I'm going to use air quotes here, it's a mild high ankle sprain,
This one.
which we'll get to that in a second. But we've seen him play through high ankle sprains before. He had a high ankle sprain when they won the Super Bowl. If he wasn't they won the Super Bowl every year, basically as far as I can remember, because my brain is gone. But he had a high ankle sprain throughout the entire playoffs for one of those years. I don't know if it was last year or the year before, and didn't affect him enough that they didn't win, and he performed fine. So,
again, another Saturday game, so shorter week. With this, as Gator saying, this would be the week they'd sit him if they're.
That being said, I don't think we see Patrick Mahomes for the rest of the regular season. I think the next time you see him is in the playoffs.
Wow, I was looking at the lines today. The odds makers have the Chiefs at 18.5 for their implied total. That's like the fourth lowest. So the odds makers seem to think Carson Wentz is starting based on that.
Yeah, and
so I think
they
at the
have a very high opinion of Carson Wentz apparently. But I don't know. Like, what do you guys think about that? It's like they don't need to, they don't need to run him out there, Patrick Mahomes out there and get him injured worse.
Because they have a Wednesday game next week. So it's short week and then another short week. So do you ignore both those weeks? And I think at the very least, he's out for the fantasy football playoffs and maybe the regular season.
Yeah.
You bring him in.
I think he's out for the fantasy football players for sure. They're 13-1. Next closest to them is Buffalo at 11-3.
With a tiebreaker, so
they do have the tiebreaker, but I don't think they get nervous until it's a one-game difference. So if Carson Wentz goes out there and wins this week, that pushes him off another week out, and I don't think they start worrying about bringing him back until, at the very minimum, it's a one-game difference.
Well, it kind of sets up where if you get these 2 short weeks, do you bring him back for the regular season finale? You would if you need to win that for the
you need the
bye.
Maybe.
But if you have it locked up, I could see them also saying, no, let's give him – and then – have that first round bye already, so then it'll be like a full month between. You get right ready for that divisional game. So yeah, I definitely agree, Doc. So for those with Mahomes in fantasy football, I definitely don't think you can rely on him in the semifinals. And it feels like he's out for the fantasy football playoffs. And so Carson Wentz, in Superflex leagues and anyone who's desperate at quarterback might at least be an option. Although the Chiefs' offense hasn't been that great this year. In years past, we'd be super excited. Oh, he's throwing to Tyreek Hill, but the way this offense is going, I'm not like super excited to play Wentz. But if you need him, you need him. So yeah, I don't think. Sorry, Gladys. I don't know if you could also abstain from answering this, but how many points did the Steelers put up in the second half versus the Eagles? Is the answer 0?
Yeah, they had 2 plays in the second half.
What?
Yeah, it was
2 plays.
2 plays second half.
Were they both turnovers?
No, Philly just salted the ball. They had 2.
Oh, you mean 2 drives, right?
Yeah.
Because I would say 2 plays seems weird because you'd normally get 3 plays and then punt. So it's like there'd have to be a turnover then. Okay, no, 2 drives makes that's wild though.
Oh my God.
Run the football. One more quarterback injury. Geno Smith. Doc.
Yeah. So Geno Smith and Jalen Waddle, they kind of go together, I think.
Okay, perfect.
So I know we want to talk about Waddle as well. So kind of reading between the lines, what they said about Geno Smith and what they said about Jalen Waddle are very similar. They said non-surgical injuries, and with Geno Smith specifically, they said no structural damage, which means that
what did he hurt?
Geno Smith hurt his knee as well.
Okay.
So he left the game. I think it was in the third quarter last night with a knee injury. Wasn't able to return.
Okay.
Although the cheeseheads were kind of having their way with him at that point. I don't know. But now no structural damage for the knee on Geno Smith. What are we dealing with? It's probably a grade 1 injury. So this is them being cute again and playing with medical terminology where you have an injury, but it's not structural damage because grade 1 injuries are microscopic tears. You can't see them on MRI, but they're there because you can see inflammation and swelling around the injured structure. So that's probably what he's dealing with. And those injuries generally take at least a couple of weeks to heal, 1 to 2 weeks, sometimes up to 3 to 4 weeks, depending. I think it would probably be on the lower side for this type of injury. And then Jalen Waddle, I think it's kind of the same thing. Coach McDaniel came out and said today, not looking like a surgical issue, but he injured his knee. It's probably something very similar. So a grade 1 injury to 1 or more of the ligaments, and something that's probably going to keep him out for at least a couple of weeks.
Okay, so I guess for Geno, do you think his likelihood of returning is before Patrick Mahomes?
Well, let's see. I think that kind of depends more on the record and how bad they need the game. So let's see where.
I mean, they're right now technically tied for the division lead, but I think the Rams currently have the tiebreaker.
Yeah, they're right there. I think I would say Geno Smith has a higher likelihood of coming back and at least giving it a try, unless he really is hurt worse than they're saying. It's going to be one of those things where they're going to have to see. Hey, Sam Howell didn't look good, but we know he's a good quarterback, or at least he has been at times in the past. So I don't think they have that much trepidation about giving him a shot. If he goes out there and he craps the bed next week, then I think they might be looking to bring Geno Smith back sooner. So that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Because I almost think I'd be more excited about Sam Howell than Carson Wentz simply for the offense around him, having Jackson Smith and Jigba the way he's playing right now. And that's why I'm wondering, I think to prioritize between picking up the two, I would prefer to have Howell, but it feels like Wentz is going to give you 16 and 17. Both the semifinal and championship game, Wentz is probably going to start those. With Howell, I guess, is there a chance Geno plays this week?
There's a chance. There's definitely a chance. I would say he's on the less than, it's less than a coin flip for sure. Maybe even less than that, maybe like 30%, 40%. It's kind of, you have to kind of watch practice reports and things like that. I don't think that's going to help you. The one thing that I say in the playoffs is you got to get to you got to get to the finals. You got to win the semifinals to get to the finals. So it's I don't really worry about the finals until it's finals week. So it's you got to get there first. So if Howell is playing this week, then that's my focus. And that's the guy that I want to go out and get, because just because the guy is playing, and take it from somebody who was forced to start Jake Haener this week at Superflex for quarterback 2, that did not go well, despite the fact that he was starting. He actually, I would have been better if I put myself in at the Superflex spot because
Then
I
you
would
at least would have scored 0 and not
and
negative.
Heener got a minus 1.68 or something like that. And then
There
he got
were several quarterbacks with negatives this week. Jameis got negative points. It felt like there was at least one other quarterback that did that too. So
Dorian Thompson Robinson got negative when he subbed in for Jameis
because he threw an interception too.
Yeah, so
yeah, I guess the complication with Howell is though when you have to decide whether or not you play Wentz on Saturday, there's a chance we still don't know for sure that Howell's starting. That Geno could be questionable.
I would play Wentz before I'd play Howell. Howell's got a worse. Yeah, Howell they play the Vikings. Brian Flores is going to eat him up.
The matchup. Yeah, fair enough.
The matchup is way better for Wentz than it is for Howell.
Who's Kansas City playing?
Texans.
The Texans. Yeah.
And maybe they could put pressure, like that's not a
they have like
matchup,
but
it might not be.
But it's not Brian Flores' defense.
That's fair. D'Amico Ryan's defense is pretty good, but yeah, I think the way the Vikings are playing, that's a whole new level. So that's fair. I guess with all that risk, I think I would prioritize Wentz over Howell, even though there's parts of Howell's enticing being with the Seahawks. We've seen him be like super high pass volume, so you think he can get fantasy points through volume there. But yeah, feels like
both
Wentz
of
is
them are behind
safer.
Shit offensive lines.
Yeah,
but I think Wentz is a little bit more mobile.
If you ask me who has a higher percentage chance of playing this week, I would say Carson Wentz, if that helps you.
I guess that makes it why, like your argument, Doc, if you have to get to week 17 first, I mean, Howell might not even give you week 16.
Yeah, he might not.
Seems pretty certain Carson Wentz will. So I guess that makes Wentz. He's a Super Bowl winning quarterback. Technically, so is David Carr. Pretty sure David Carr was the backup for the Giants one of the years they won the Super Bowl with Eli. So David Carr also has a Super Bowl.
There's a lot of those floating around. That's actually kind of fun if you got some time on your hands. Look up quarterbacks that won Super Bowls as a backup. You'd be surprised. There's some pretty interesting names on that list.
I guess the list of injured players. I mentioned Jalen Waddle. With him, there's not really one extra guy that steps up. We just think that's more targets for the guys that are already there: Achane, Smith, and Tyreek Hill. I guess the couple names, like talking with the Seahawks, of Ken Walker, if we're expecting like what his timeline to return is, or is it going to be Zach Charbonnet all through the fantasy playoffs?
Yeah, the thing with Ken Walker, he's dealing with a calf injury, and these can be the milder version of a calf injuries. They can be on the 2 to 4 week timeline. So he's already missed 2 games. I think the thing that's most significant about that is he has not practiced since December 4th. So it has not looked like he's been particularly close to getting back. So it definitely seems like he's more on the longer end of that time frame. And the issue with that is that once you start to come back and practice, there is the chance that it either flares up again or you actually hurt it worse and you tear it worse. So all those things are still in play. Until you see him practicing, you can't have any confidence that he's going to be back out there. And the fact that we haven't seen him practice up to this point, my confidence is going down that, he's actually going to be out for this week and it could be even longer. Chiefs should sign Dan Marino.
Yeah, and then give him a quarterback, right? When you talk about all these quarterbacks with rings, how about the guy without it?
Laces out, Dan. Laces out.
How about Cedric Tillman, another guy that's been injured the last couple of weeks?
Yeah. I thought that Cedric Tillman was going to be able to make it back, but basically all you got to look for is if he gets a full practice in, he's very likely that he's going to play. He did not make it up to that stage of the concussion protocol, which is being able to do a full practice and not having recurrence of symptoms. He got right up to that with a couple of limited practices, couldn't get to a full practice, and then was downgraded to out. So if he's practicing in full and you don't hear anything about any setbacks, I think it's pretty fair to say that he's going to be back this week.
And if that is the case, we'll probably get news that he cleared the protocol even before, so it won't be like questionable game time decisions.
Yeah, it should be relatively early in the week, or at least by when do they play? Friday, they a Sunday game?
I think that is a Sunday game.
Okay, yeah, then we should know I would say we'll know by Friday at the latest.
Is it unusual for someone in concussion protocol to go on IR?
It happens. I don't know if it's the most common occurrence in the NFL. It's definitely not the most common occurrence in the NFL, but it happens.
They did it with Tua this year.
They did it with Austin Eckler too.
Yeah, that's true. The Watch did that. So Yeah, I think if they think it's so bad that this will take a month to recover from, they may as well just put him on injured reserve and not have the player stress about it. And maybe it's also for peace of mind, right? Okay, we think he can come back in 3 weeks, but why risk it? Let's give him the full month off. So yeah, it might start becoming more of a common thing. I wonder, especially if the player has suffered a concussion before. I mean, Chris Olave, right? Like Chris Olave looks like he's done for the year with that concussion. So
what's the benefit to the team of putting the player on IR?
Their salary, I think.
You free up a roster spot.
You free up a roster
spot. That's it.
So you call up someone from the practice squad. I think you save some cap space too. I think there's weekly. I think there's weekly game checks that go to players. If you're on injured reserve, I think you still receive it, but it won't count on the team's salary cap.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So I know a team that might use that next year is Deshaun Watson. If they put him on injured reserve for most of the next year, his massive contract, they still have to pay him from an ownership perspective, but it might not hurt their cap at all to the point where they could go out and sign another quarterback and have, how do you have all these quarterbacks together? Well, if Watson's on injured reserve all year, you can hide all his money there and still.
That's it. That's their get out of jail free card. Can you guys? I want you to just picture it. All right, it's next year. Deshaun Watson is just getting ready to come back. He makes a big stink because he's like, I'm going to come back and I'm going to play, and they're trying to get him to go on IR so they don't have his $119 million, whatever it is, thing count against the cap. And then Jamie Perogue, Nancy Kerrigan's him coming down the walkway and sends him back to IR. And
then they sign Aaron Rodgers to the
yeah. So I could definitely see that. That makes a lot of sense, actually. I'm sure that's what they're going to push for. I don't know if he's going to play ball, but
well, I mean, talk about Roschon Johnson, right? Like, I mean, he already missed last week. He's missed this week now too with tonight's game, so it's going to be 2 games missed with the concussion. Yeah, same. And I mean,
amazing. Like, finally starting to recognize the concussions are actually bad for you. It only took a Will Smith Academy Award nominated movie, a bunch of lawsuits, and people yelling about Tua almost getting decapitated 3 times on national television, and they're like, hey, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't bring these guys back in 3 days when they get a concussion. That's probably not good.
Washington should play in Japanese league so he can get his.
Didn't Dennis Allen keep Kendra Miller on IR and no one knew why?
Yeah, exactly. We still don't know why. Do we know why Kendra Miller was put on IR talk at all?
No. They never said. He was I think he was beefing with the coaching staff, and they were just like, you know what? We're putting you on IR, young man.
But based on what the other coaches have said about Kendra Miller, I don't know if it was him beefing with the coaching staff or just Dennis Allen. Because other coaches have seemed to talk very highly of Kendra Miller. So I wonder if that was.
Hey, it only takes one, it only takes one person to have a personality conflict. I mean, there's plenty of people who think that I'm an asshole.
Running backs coach, that's one thing. You're beefing with the head coach, right? That's
so IR isn't a medical thing. It's not necessarily a medical thing.
They can justify it, right? Yeah, he had this one injury. We can do it to justify it, right?
He had flu-like symptoms, so we put him on IR.
Okay.
So even if Watson didn't want to go on IR. And
not to be a conspiracy theorist, but there are ways that you can kind of say things that aren't necessarily easily quantifiable. Like if I said, it's like, come on, Gladys, you know this. It's like you got a test in math. It's a 6th grade. You tell mom you got a stomach ache. It's like, what are they going to do? I got to stay home, right? So they're not taking you to the doctor. It's like you get to stay home and watch The Price is Right. So they can do stuff like that. Just, what's his issue? Oh, he has flu-like symptoms. He has a stomach ailment. He has abdominal pain, whatever. And they're like, okay. Well,
and there's no limitation. Cool. It's not for 4 weeks or 8 weeks. So you can just keep keeping a person on IR for a whole season?
Yeah, there's no max. It's the minimum's 4 weeks, but I don't think there's a maximum.
Yeah, there isn't.
I think there's a number of IR spots you can use. You have a number, but I think the season-ending full-year IR, I think there's no limit. I think there's because you can designate players to return from IR. And I think
that's the rate-limiting thing is how many you can designate to return.
Yeah, so you can put your entire team on injured reserve if you wanted, in theory. So that, there's no limit on that because I think, frankly, there's no limit to football injuries. Any number of players can get hurt, and it ensures that a team, even if they're so decimated by injuries, they'll still be able to have enough players play, even if it's not the players you want to be playing.
Okay.
There you go. Anybody?
Did Kendra Miller sleep with the coach's daughter? Again, no comment. The
I
Doc
cannot confirm or deny any of those allegations. That's between him and Dennis Allen, maybe Dennis Allen's daughter. I don't know.
Well, apparently the Vikings scored a field goal. That game has kicked off. So maybe this is time to get to our second game. I don't think we missed any players that we want to talk about injury-wise that affect the fantasy football playoffs anyway. But Atlanta Falcons, 5.5-point favorites against Doc's Las Vegas Raiders.
It's 6.5 now. It's moved to 6.5.
Okay.
6.5. That Desmond Ritter being the starter, and they're like, wait a second, that line is not enough.
Exactly.
Revenge game be damned.
Anyway, so how are we picking this one? Gladys, you want to start with something?
Nope, I do not.
Okay. I'll share Dan's pick. So Dan and I are both taking the Falcons, and we both took the lower as well. And honestly, I was tempted to take the Raiders because I was looking. The Falcons aren't really good at blowing teams out and covering. Only 3 times this year they've actually covered a 5.5-point spread. So this is not something that they're used to winning by. But then I think the other side, but it's Desmond Ritter. So that's my whole argument. It's Desmond Ritter. I was gonna put Vegas plus 5.5, and I'm just like, I can't pick Desmond Ritter. Sorry, Doc. As much as I wanted to pick the Raiders, if Aiden O'Connell was playing, I think I would have gone Raiders. But it's Desmond Ritter. I just can't.
Hey, Doc, is Wilkins out too?
Wilkins.
Christian Wilkins. So do the Raiders have a pass rush now? No Crosby, no Wilkins.
Oh, Crosby, right? Yeah, he's out. Let's see. Wilkins he's been out. He's on IR.
Yeah, he's on IR still. So
yeah.
I'm gonna go Raiders 5.5 then. Oh wait, no, I'm not. They have no pass rush.
So it's 6.5.
So wait, are we going 2 unanimous picks in the same week? Guess we're all taking the Falcons. We're all taking.
I'm not taking. No, I didn't get a chance to go yet. I'm only giving Gladys the stage, but I'm not. I didn't go yet.
I meant of the 3 people in the contest all year, right? Just to track.
I'm gonna go. It's in Vegas. No pass rush. I'm gonna go Raiders. I'm gonna take the Raiders.
Okay, fair enough. I think it's pretty close. I don't. Like I said, the Falcons just have not been blowing teams out to the spread. So
Kirk Cousins kind of sucks.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And Doc, to talk injuries, is this something where Cousins might actually look better next year, a full year removed from the Achilles tear, and maybe he'll trust it more? Because it also seems like he's just not planning when he throws. He's doing it all through his arm, and it's like this is not Cousins' typical throwing mechanics. I also think is his shoulder actually getting affected by it, and he's getting more fatigued and losing some velocity.
I don't know. I think it's affecting his mechanics for sure, and I think it's bothering him. I don't think it's necessarily anything catastrophic. I think he's just been playing all year, and he's playing on a surgically repaired Achilles, and it's probably inflamed and it hurts, and he's got other things that are hurting him because he's 36 and he's playing in the NFL, and it's all just kind of coming to a head at this point, and it's definitely affecting his performance. And there was a question of, even if he has a bad game tonight, does he get benched for the rest of the year? Not permanently, but just to be like, hey, you know what, you're kind of you're really struggling through this, let's just sit you down and bring it back next year and give it a go again.
But the risk there, what if Penix looks good? I mean, there's tons of temptation, man. If he looked good at the end of the year, you just get rid of Cousins and roll with Penix.
It's certainly possible, because there was all this big explosion of emotion when they drafted Penix, because it's like, well, you signed Kirk Cousins, it's like, why do you draft Penix in the first round? And it's like, do people not understand the concept of insurance? It's like you have a 36-year-old quarterback with a ruptured Achilles tendon who just got it repaired. Yeah, you sign him to a contract, but if it doesn't work out, then you don't want to be pulling people out of the stands to play quarterback, because that's what you've just been dealing with. Going back to Marcus Mariota, Desmond Ritter, and on and on and on, going back to Jeff George. So you want to have some insurance in case it doesn't work out. So I think there's, it's good to have, an overabundance of assets at such an important position, especially when you have all those other skill players, that you want to have somebody out there that's going to be able to utilize them. So, do I still think Kirk Cousins is an amazing quarterback? Absolutely. But, Father Time is undefeated. He's dealing with a repaired Achilles tendon, which up until Cam Akers, essentially nobody came back from. So this is all new and kind of unprecedented. So I don't think it's a bad thing at all. I think it was actually really smart by Atlanta. Maybe it wasn't the smartest fantasy move, but as we have to occasionally remind people, these guys don't play fantasy football. They play real football, and there's different rules for that. So
in spite of all that, Jamie is taking the Falcons money line with the Falcons, I think 4 separate picks to win every single quarter. And then also Vikings money line, and all that combined for plus 855 odds. Because the Falcons and Vikings, like the money line for just them straight up winning, are going to be minus odds because they're both heavily favored. So you put all this together in a parlay, and that's how you get what looks like obvious lines as plus. So that's the Jamie special.
That is the Jamie special indeed.
So Doc, who is your pick going to be?
Yeah, so I'm going to stay on brand. I got to take the lower for sure. And I'm going with the Raiders. The revenge narrative is live and well. I'm taking Desmond Ridder in the revenge game and the points. And it's like I'm on here for one show. I'm not going to go against my boys. So shameless. It doesn't get any deeper than that. Shameless, homerism for the Raiders. And let's see if they can get one.
Dan and I also took the lower. Gladys, are you going higher or lower than 44.5 points?
What is it? 44.5?
Yeah.
Lower.
All right. So we're all taking lower.
Lower.
The Desmond Ridder / Cousins Achilles effect, I suppose. Now we get to player props. Dan's going Kirk Cousins higher than 238 passing yards. 230.5 passing yards. So in spite of everything we just said, Dan's going Cousins. I'm connected to that slightly. I took Ray McLeod higher than 36.5 receiving yards.
I like that one.
And he smashed it the last couple of weeks with 90 yards in both of the last 2 games, like tripling over that number. So guy I've got in one fantasy league. So that's the pro fantasy pick that I wanted to make. I was thinking Jordan Addison for the other game, 54.5 receiving yards. He either smashes by it or he fails to hit it. Or is it Ray McLeod, almost 20 yards less at 36.5? Feels like even if he has a down game, he can still hit that. So I was pretty confident with that one. Gladys, do you have a prop? I guess you have to prop, but what is your prop?
Darnell Mooney higher than 4.5 receptions.
So to you guys, does it feel like Kirk Cousins has been playing like well, average, or poorly for the last like month or so? Just kind of like without looking at stats or anything. What's your sense? Poorly, right?
Yeah.
I would say based on my expectations, average, because I didn't expect this to be a good year with Cousins coming off the ruptured Achilles. Not going to lie, when the Falcons drafted Penix, I had 2 thoughts. A, has Cousins' injury recovery not gone as planned?
Mm-hmm.
Or B,
that was a good thought.
Has it gone exactly as they thought? And then they realized, oh my God, we've just made a mistake. We just signed a 36-year-old quarterback coming off a torn Achilles to this massive contract. This is not the answer. This guy, Penix, might be the answer. I'm starting to feel like, did they just make a massive mistake signing Cousins and not just starting Penix right off the bat this year?
Yeah. Where did they draft Penix?
8th overall.
Yeah.
Where they always draft.
And who was behind them?
Vikings took McCarthy at 10th. The Broncos took Bo Nix at 12th. So especially McCarthy was the guy that, Penix went ahead of McCarthy. That seemed like surprising. So the Falcons clearly said, we prefer Penix over McCarthy, in spite of what people saying it was the opposite.
And wasn't there a rumor that, you guys wanted Daniels, right? Vegas, Antonio Pierce wanted Jaden Daniels.
Who didn't want Jaden Daniels? That's no secret. Yeah. Everyone wanted
There
Jaden
were a
Daniels.
couple teams that didn't want Jaden Daniels, that didn't have high expectations.
I would imagine those are the very poorly run, stupid teams.
I don't know. I mean,
who wouldn't want Daniels? I mean, I still think the Bears messed up massively taking Caleb Williams over Daniels. But
I wouldn't say that, but I think that Daniels landed in the better spot.
Which is hilarious because all the talk in the offseason was how Caleb went to the best spot we've seen in years.
He went to the best spot with the players, but not with the coaches. He went to the best spot. Like if Jaden Daniels had what Caleb Williams has for the players, it would be an astronomically great year.
I mean, but I'm still not convinced Caleb Williams is better than Justin Fields. I'm just going to flat out say that. Maybe that's my crazy bias for Fields, but Williams to me hasn't shown anything. He showed he's just as bad as Fields was on this awful team. Give them a good coaching staff and let's see. Well, we've seen Fields work pretty well with a good coaching staff and win games. So
That's the key right there. Like they
Yeah,
really
it's the
have
coaching
been
staff.
hamstrung.
Daniels would not have looked this good on the Bears, guaranteed.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that he's still not better than Caleb, and that he still wouldn't have been the better choice. Which I will go with until Caleb proves me wrong. Which feels like that might not happen.
Well, good. It's going back to Cousins real quick, just to put the period on the end of that sentence. Going back to week 10, if I told you that Kirk Cousins' touchdown to interception ratio was 0 to 8, would you believe me?
Yeah.
That's
He
crazy.
hasn't thrown it.
I already knew that, so I believe you.
He only had 2 good games, and that was against Tampa. Both games were against Tampa's defense.
I'm blown away by that. I knew he wasn't doing that well, but I didn't know it was that bad.
Yeah.
He had one good drive against the Eagles, Gladys, in week 2. It screwed us over because we all had the Eagles at -5.5, and they had it. And then Cousins went on this random drive to end the game and score a touchdown to win it and take if they just stopped him there and held the score as it was, we would have hit on that.
He doesn't. He's
found the worst time for us, at least for our convenience, to come alive and have a good drive in that game. And then, like you said, 2 other games where he was actually good. Really, 3 games that were good. And for the majority of that 3rd game, he wasn't good for most of it. He just had one good drive.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think Cousins is the type to take himself out of a game because he's not well, but someone should. He's obviously not playing well. Like, he's not doing what Kirk Cousins does well.
Yeah, no, I agree. So, we'll see. We'll see. Darnold
really hoping it's Jordan.
Yeah, well, that's the last thing you want. Now you just gotta hope that DJ Moore just blows up. So I don't know. Do you guys want to talk about maybe some guys, going into, for the teams that are eliminated or going into next year, like guys that have gotten hurt that, is it going to affect their stock, going
dynasty
into
or even just
or dynasty off-season, moves?
Yeah, because there were a few really significant injuries that knocked players out for the whole year. So yeah, let's focus on that, Don.
Okay. So one guy we can talk about is Jonathan Brooks, real quick. I did put something out on this is brutal, right? But maybe not as bad as it looks at first blush, which is kind of why I'm bringing it up. I did put something out on the Discord. So for those of you that are watching or listening that aren't on the Discord, going to Discord, it's free. There's a lot of great analysts in there, but I have my own injury channel where I answer questions, and occasionally if there's something that I think is really significant, then I'll just kind of post it on my own. And Jonathan Brooks, rose to the level of, I think this is important information to get out because I think people are going to have questions and they don't really know what to do. Like, he's a young, talented player, but what are we looking at going forward, especially in dynasty leagues? Like, what can we expect? So as it turns out, guys, Gladys, Kyle, audience, re-injuring your ACL, especially if you're somebody under the age of 25, is not really that uncommon. It happens in about 20 to 25% of the cases. So having another tear on the same ACL that just got repaired is not something that's like super rare. Like, it happens. Time-wise, ACL repair the first time, generally about 9 to 10 months. Second time around, it's probably more of the 12 to 14 month time frame. So there's a really high likelihood that we're not going to see Jonathan Brooks at all next year. So given that, if you are looking to acquire Jonathan Brooks, you're probably acquiring him for 2026 and beyond, which I think he'll be 24 at that point. I need to look that up. But what is his performance level going to be? This is where I think it's really interesting. According to the medical literature, high-level athletes coming back from 2 ACL surgeries have about a 50 to 60% chance of returning to their pre-injury level of functioning. So you're looking at a coin flip, maybe better, that Jonathan Brooks is still Jonathan Brooks, the way that he was going to be before he actually injured his ACL the first time. So if you really believe in the talent and you can get him at a rate where somebody just wants to get out from under it, they start reading some doom and gloom columns, and let's be honest, it's going to be really easy to be doom and gloom about this. The acquisition cost may be very cheap. It might be worth getting in on if the acquisition cost is low enough, because there's a better than 50%, 50% or better chance that in 2026 you have yourself an RB1. And, I think that's the kind of thing that's worth taking a shot on.
I would say the acquisition cost isn't what scares me. It's the opportunity cost. If I this is not something I think I'd want to do early this offseason. And then you're the one that holds him. I think, again, making the bet that he's not going to play at all through 2025. Let some other team hold him through most of 2025. And around this time next year might be the smart time to acquire him. Because if he doesn't play next year, we're not going to see his value increase.
Well, the only caveat I would say to that is it kind of depends on how you play. It depends on where your team is. But this is the only thing that I would say to that. Now, the blood is running in the streets. No one is going to write anything positive about this. There's, oh, my God, it's the end of the world. He's got 2 ACL injuries. He's going to be 2 years older. Like, why are you even talking about this guy? As you get closer towards the end of the year next year, his name's going to start coming up again. The videos are going to come out where he's doing the tire drill and he's, running and catching the ball and he's, going through the tackling dummies and things like that. And then people are going to get excited again. And then the price is going to start to go up. So that's a possibility as well. So you have to kind of weigh like your timing. If you're a time the market guy, like I know Kyle is, then, that's definitely something to consider. But there's a flip side to that coin where the positive reports start coming out and then the market overcorrects and now the price goes way up. So, if your team is something where you're going to be competitive next year, yeah, it's probably not the move you want to make. If your team is just a dumpster fire and you're like, hey, I can take a couple of third-round picks and I can turn it to Jonathan Brooks because the guy just wants to get out from under and not worry about it for a couple of years, then, maybe that's something to consider.
Especially your plan in 2025 from a dynasty perspective. I'm tanking for the 101 in the 2026 rookie draft. He is, in theory, a perfect asset since he's not going to score you any points and not going to get you a win at some point. So.
That's the perfect way to play it.
Yeah, no, from that perspective, I get it. I guess I have a hard time thinking like any of my teams are that bad. Maybe there are some teams that are that bad. Yeah, that's true. I do have a couple teams that are that bad. Most of my teams, I'm not already thinking next year's a rebuild too. Like this far out, I tend to think I'm optimistic that I can at least compete. And if whatever I spend on Brooks, I'd rather spend on something that's going to help me win in 2020.
Yeah, I will say that there are people out there. They do like the 2 and 3 year rebuilds.
For sure.
Talked about Bob the Builder. They're always rebuilding. So
I think acquisition cost and opportunity cost are two different things to hold in point. Because I do agree, like no one's going to value him at a first. Like I also argued he shouldn't have been a first round pick in rookie drafts this year anyway. But he went there so often, even in Superflex. Even though Brooks was never as good as Roshan, as Jamie's pointing out, which I definitely agree is totally true. I mean, I don't even think he's better than Chuba Hubbard, but that's neither here nor there.
The resurgent Chuba Hubbard.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, I remember him in college. People really liked his profile, and then he had the 1 year where he sat out and it sort of maybe hurt a little bit of where he was going to go in the draft, and he was a 4th rounder. But I remember the way people talked about his talent seemed like he was a lot closer to the Breece Hall type of tier.
And a fellow Canadian, right, Kyle?
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
Definitely love the Canadian kids. He's helped me win a couple leagues this year.
Who else we got?
Well, I think I guess Dak Prescott was one of the other names for a season ending.
I really don't think there's going to be too much for this. Like he may end up needing surgery in the offseason. That's a possibility. I don't think it really affects anything. I think the Cowboys are, do they fire Mike McCarthy? I don't know. I feel like they probably should. I don't know if they're going to. But either way, he still comes back to the same situation. He's been a perennial QB1 for years. So I think it's just going to be more of the same. CeeDee Lamb will still be there. They'll probably get a running back who's better than what they have now. And, when
I was saying, sorry, Jamie, when I was saying 4th round, I meant like 4th round NFL draft. But yeah, I think beyond his draft capital, people were excited about Hubbard, and they thought, okay, he went later than expected, and so people were still willing to draft him maybe a little higher than draft capital indicated.
Late 2nd, early 3rd, but I remember people were excited about him.
So like I don't think Jonathan Brooks is better than Chuba Hubbard personally. So I think he also has to overcome Hubbard now too. And now with this big extension, because I think the idea with Brooks was, you draft him, Hubbard's here this year, but then he's a free agent and he's gone. Well, now you're having to deal with Hubbard there the entirety of Brooks' rookie contract. So what are you really ever getting out of this?
Yeah, well, Hubbard also has to stay. He has to stay healthy too. So he's been fortunate up to this point. I know you could say that about anybody, but we forget.
It's like big volume this year. He's had tons of carries in games. So yeah,
we carry these things forward 2 years. But players get hurt all the time. So the best laid plans of mice and men, things change and they change quickly. So it's definitely something that the market could be depressed because of that as well. And then lo and behold, Chuba Hubbard, injures himself late next year. And oh, look at that. Now he's out and Jonathan Brooks is coming back and then, to the moon, right? So things change. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, definitely fair. Which I guess to compare Brooks to guys that were going, like, let's say Blake Corum and Trey Benson, right? Because it seemed like a lot of times those were the three running backs taken in rookie drafts. Are you more likely to go for Brooks, or is this injury make it that you'd rather invest in a Trey Benson and a Blake Corum because of their health?
I think they were, at least for me, I'll let you guys, give your opinion. I really found like with the running backs this year, it was kind of like you pick your favorite and you just go with it. So a lot of them were kind of like all things were pretty equal for me. I didn't really have a favorite. Like Jonathan Brooks went first, but I mean, honestly, the guy that I liked the most out of everybody was Braylon Allen, and we haven't even talked about him.
He's under injury too. Yes, I guess you could.
Yeah. So given the fact that they were all pretty similar to me, and now that that Jonathan Brooks is going to be out for the whole year, like that definitely knocks him down below those other two guys. So that's kind of where I'm at. I don't think there was somebody who was head and shoulders talent and performance wise above everybody else. I think you just kind of everybody kind of picked the guy that they wanted. They went to their respective corner and that was their guy. And the people that didn't, that just didn't have a horse in the race, they just fell back on draft capital and said, well, Brooks was the first running back, so I'll take him first. And that was the tiebreaker.
Really, we tend to get several starters out of every draft class. We really got 2 starters this year, and they weren't the guys everyone was expecting. You got Bucky Irving, who was a 4th rounder in the NFL draft, and Tyrone Tracy, who I think was a 6th rounder in the NFL draft. Those have been the 2 guys to actually become starters on their teams. But this was not a good draft class to get multiple starters. Like a lot of these guys might just be backups for most of their careers. So it was definitely this was the year I think to fade rookies in the running back rookie drafts. Running backs in the rookie drafts. I mean, not fade all rookies, but I was definitely like, oh man, Xavier Legette, 1st round NFL wide receiver, fall into the late 2nd. Like that, man, you're taking some of these like 3rd round, 4th round running backs ahead of him. That seemed weird to me. Like, and honestly, Brooks ahead of Legette seems strange to me. Like, if you're thinking, okay, I've got a 1st round wide receiver and a 2nd round running back from the same team, I don't see any way I would take the running back ahead of the receiver. Just knowing dynasty, long-term value of receivers, the market value they have, that draft capital. Oh, the 2nd round running back has a torn ACL. Like that was one that was pretty wild to me. And I think definitely thought Jonathan Brooks' price got out of control just because he was the only guy taken in the 2nd round of the NFL draft. And people use that to elevate him. But like I said, other than he's a 2nd rounder and Hubbard's a 4th rounder, I see nothing that tells me Brooks is a better running back than Hubbard.
Yeah, I think you could say that now. I think you'd be very hard pressed to find somebody who would have that opinion, before the season started. So a lot changes. It kind of underscores the point of things change quickly.
Yeah, which is why I'm super happy I have 0 Jonathan Brooks. Like he was to me an easy guy to fade in kind of all formats this year, whether it was redraft or dynasty. I was on record a lot in the podcast. You should draft Hubbard and Ford, not Brooks and Chubb, because why do I want the guys dealing with injuries? When they return, they're probably going to split work with the backups. Whereas the best time to play a Panthers or Browns running back this year was early in the season when Hubbard had all the work.
Yep.
Ford had all the work. As soon as Chubb came back, like that almost killed the Browns entirely. And now we might get good, usable Ford again. That Chubb got hurt, and same thing with Hubbard. So those are easy guys for me to fade. And I guess maybe that in my mind, Doc, I'm happy I don't have any Brooks. I don't want to invest in it now. Like at this point, like I'm fine just never having Jonathan Brooks.
No, that makes sense. And I totally get that. But it's just kind of like if you were ambivalent, then maybe now's the time that the price has gone down enough that you say, all right, now I'll take a shot. I wasn't willing to take a shot with the 1st or 2nd round pick in my rookie draft, but now if it's going to cost me less, then maybe I'll give it a go. It's really hard for people, I think, to get over that hump of when you get bad news. Guy goes to a team where the offense doesn't look that good. They don't like the coaching staff. There's got a guy in front of them, whatever. There's some issue. It's really easy to kind of blow that out of proportion and say, well, this guy has no value. But like I said, things change. Coaches change, players get hurt. Guys perform better than we think. And then all you have to do is not do anything. You can just hold and see if, the thing appreciates. And if not, it didn't cost you that much to take a shot on a talented guy. Maybe not the most talented guy in the class, but still a talented running back in his own right, who's still going to be 23 years old when he sets foot on the field again. So still pretty young, even for the ageist members of the fantasy community out there who want to put a bullet in you after you're over 25. So I get it. But if you were out and you want to still be out, like, I can't fault you for that either. Like, the news is really bad. So, you're not – there's going to be a lot of opportunities for you to spend that capital on other players between now and 2026.
So I guess one last name to talk about, Doc, and it's fitting to be your last name to talk about, former Raiders quarterback Derek Carr.
Oh, yeah, my buddy, Derek Carr. So he's still – I give him a lot of credit. I mean, say what you want about Derek Carr, and people will. He could just as easily pack it up. He had a concussion. He broke his hand, and he won't let them put him on IR. Like, he still was questionable, like, coming up to this game, and, like, still wants to get out there. So, I give him a lot of credit for that. I don't know if he's going to be able to do it. Broken bones, they take 4 to 6 weeks to heal. What are we really playing for at this point? What are the Saints going to look like next year? I happen to be of the opinion, and I might be in the minority, that even if he's not the Saints quarterback next year, he's going to be somebody's starting quarterback next year. I believe that. Remains to be seen, but people have been trying to shovel dirt on Derek Carr for 5 years now, and I think he's only 31 or 32, and he's still hanging around. And he's still a good enough quarterback. Like, he will get you some points. He's not going to be elite. He's not going to be a QB1, but he's firmly in that high QB2 territory, and he has been for many years at this point, and that's worth something. That's not nothing, as they say.
Well, in Superflex, I mean, he's still getting you starts. Like, he's worth starting on a lot of weeks, even if it's okay. I've got 2 kind of streamers as my QB2, QB3, and play the matchups. He feels like he fits perfectly there. Like, if you're going to take him as your second quarterback, you probably want to take a third guy almost immediately after that.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
Like, I've gone early on one guy, and I'll wait for that second guy to strengthen the rest of my positions. Carr is kind of perfect for that. You don't necessarily want to play him every week because he doesn't run, so the production floor isn't there. But if he gets into good matchups, he has a high ceiling.
Couldn't agree more, my buddy.
All right,
my buddy Dak.
Doc, I almost said Dak. We did just talk about Dak, but Doc, super happy to have you on once again for an episode of the 2-point conversion. So thanks for coming back.
Yeah, it was really good to be back. It's good to see your beautiful faces again. Can I regale you guys with a story before we go?
Please do.
So there's a friend of mine who is in a league with our old friend of the show, and our old buddy Hamid Sandhu. And this was my friend's first Superflex league. So I guess everybody else that knew anything about fantasy football was busy, so he came to me for advice on how to do the draft. So we kind of talked about it a little bit, and he was really high on this quarterback, and he wanted to make sure that he got him. And so he went through the draft, played out the season, ended up making the playoffs, and is playing Hamid this week in his first season and his first fantasy playoff game in this league, in Superflex, period. I'll ask Kyle. Gladys, you might know. But Kyle, if you had to guess who that QB2 was in question that he was so excited about, who just dropped an absolute bomb on Hamid this week, could you guess who it is? I don't mean to put you on the spot.
I guess is it Jamie or is it not Jamie? I don't know. I thought Jamie might be that quarterback.
It was Jamie was the quarterback. It was not. It's not Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I know. Who was the good
so
quarterback?
I'll give you a hint.
Aaron Rodgers.
No, it was somebody that Hamid and I had an argument about for about 50
Jared
minutes.
Goff.
Jared Goff is the quarterback.
he put up 64 points for me in a league. We have points for first downs too, so the scoring gets inflated, but they're just wild.
So I told my friend, this is the end of the story, and I know the audience probably doesn't care at this point, but I said the weight of the irony of Jared Goff being the quarterback 3 years later that knocks Hamid out of the playoffs in this guy's first ever Superflex league, the weight of that irony could knock the earth off its axis. Like, that is, it doesn't get any more ironic than that. So waiting to see what the end result is. But either way, the fact that somewhere Hamid is sweating out this playoff match because Jared Goff stomped a mud hole in his ass and walked it dry is the most beautiful thing that's happened this fantasy football season, as far as I'm concerned.
That is awesome, though.
And completely validated my faith in him 3 years later, where Hamid was
he's getting replaced. He's never going to start again.
His character, my character, everybody's character that said anything nice about Jared Goff ever. Well, Hamid, who's laughing now?
Jamie. Oh, Jamie's not laughing, but Jamie is here. Hi, Jamie.
What's up? I just want to say what's up to Doc.
Hey, buddy. Good to
Miss
see you.
Bro. Nice to see you, too.
Thanks for jumping in here. You got the background, very professional. I like this. Should we plug the holiday party before we go?
Sure. Yeah. So on December 18th, so that's only 2 days from now, essentially 48 hours from now. So December 18th, Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Mountain. We're going to have I think it's the 5th annual Going for Two live holiday special. Jeff's organized a bunch of different games and drafts that we're all going to get together and participate in. So it should be super fun. Going to be talking some fantasy football. I think the games will be related to football, fantasy football, but it's just a chill, fun time. The analysis isn't necessarily there. I mean, if someone comes up with a question they want us to answer, I'm sure. Enough analysts will just be like stepping over.
I highly doubt any good analysis is going to be coming out of that. But I will say this, because when I work, I listen to podcasts like basically the whole time that I'm working. It is just if you like listening to people like who enjoy football, who enjoy each other's company, or maybe having a couple of drinks, playing some fun games, it is really entertaining just for entertainment's sake. Because there's something about like when you listen to a podcast and it's like, yes, you're getting good analysis, but it's kind of like, antiseptic, it's very like buttoned up and, professional. This is not that. This is just a bunch of people who are probably like you out in the audience who love football, who love, fantasy sports and really enjoy making jokes and making fun of themselves, making fun of each other and enjoy each other's company. And it's a lot of fun. I've gone back and listened to them afterwards, even though I've been on them and there were things that I missed. And it's like, man, that was really, really like this was just a good time. It's just a fun, good experience. So it's definitely worth checking out if you want to, throw something on or in the background while you're wrapping your Christmas presents or whatever. You'll definitely have some laughs. And there's a lot of characters that are going to be there. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, we're certainly going to enjoy it. I guess, I don't know. I think they might not actually have Speak on it tomorrow night. So that might be the next thing you see on the Going for Two Live network. But be sure to subscribe on YouTube. Also on Twitch and Facebook, which you can use to join the chats like our good friend Jamie did tonight. So appreciate you joining us in the chat and joining us live here, Jamie. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. A lot of good info. I love the injury analysis. If you guys want to go dive deeper into injury analysis, there's a book out there on Amazon called Injuries Suck, but Your Fantasy Team Doesn't Have to.
Love that.
It's right there. It's that thin black one.
Yep.
It's only like 100 pages, but it's condensed full of great information. It's awesome.
Thank you guys for promoting the book. As always, the advertisement royalty checks are going to be in the mail. Don't worry that they're not signed in third party out of state. That doesn't matter. But no, you guys are the best. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to come back and hang out with you guys. And good luck for those of you that are still alive in the fantasy playoffs. It's very unlikely that I will be one of them if in about 90 minutes or so, but I think Gladys is heading to the semifinals.
FPC Dynasty, yeah.
Kyle's in 27 leagues, so he's probably in like 25 playoffs. And Jamie,
18 leagues, 7 playoffs. Actually,
there you go.
It was actually a pretty bad percentage, like below 40% playoffs this year.
Well, you know what? That's still 7 chances to win a championship, and Jamie is in very successful at fantasy and making ridiculous bets, so he's probably going to make the most money out of all of us. So
yeah, I think I didn't do the whole mathematical, but I'm pretty much like 65% in the playoffs, maybe even 70.
Oh, that's pretty awesome.
Don't forget to send me a picture of the puppy and the baby.
Oh, you got it. Absolutely.
You guys, it was a pleasure seeing you, all of you. Doc, it's a pleasure seeing you. I will see most of you Wednesday, I think.
Yes, indeed.
Thank everyone. Bryce, good luck. I hope that you made good choices.
Whether it was Aaron Jones or DJ Moore, we'll see. Sorry about Darnold scoring already. Gladys, honestly, fantastic season co-hosting with you on the 2-point conversion.
Always fantastic hosting with you, Kyle.
Thank you, everyone.
And jumping in on the no particular order, I appreciate you very much. Very, very much. Jamie, what can I say?
I just love you so much, Gladys. If I could marry you, I would.
If I believed in marriage, I would probably marry you, Jamie. Unfortunately, I don't believe in marriage.
I was gonna say, is this the 2-point proposal? The conversion?
All right, I have to go feed my dogs because my one's biting my leg. And
you don't want to feed it with you.
Exactly. She already bit me once today. So
speaking of leg, check out Jamie's 18 leg parlays. Or
I know it's crazy parlays. I have not won one parlay on a Monday night game this year. I sucked. I might try a new one. Oh, thanks.
The dog.
My dog though. Yeah, it's not my dog though. I don't know whose dog it is.
It's a dog though, right? You love
it is a dog. Yes, coming out of it, looking out of it. I don't know. I just thought it was cute. I love dogs.
All right, Kyle, take us out of here before Gladys gets mauled by her beloved.
I know.
All right. Well, thank you everyone who's watched us on this season of the 2-point conversion Monday night pregame show. There's still more Monday Night Football, but no more of us. Yeah. But there's still lots of great stuff that will happen throughout the year on the Going for Two Live Network. Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.